Nearly ended my romance because my fiancé won't get tested for Huntington's, but therapy made me rethink my decision. My fiancé and I have been together for 5 years. He's the love of my life and I literally can't imagine being without him. So the thought of doing this is making my stomach roll. He was adopted and neither he nor his parents knew much about his medical history. A few weeks ago, he met his biological brother for the first time and found out that his birth father had passed from Huntington's disease. There's a 50% chance that my fiancé also has the genetic defect that causes Huntington's, but he refuses to get tested. It's not the disease I'm scared of, it's the not knowing. If we know he'll get it, we can prepare financially, practically, and emotionally. He says a positive test result will hold him back from living his life, but I feel like it's the opposite. How can we live with this giant maybe looming over us? How can I make smart decisions on where to live, how to budget, or even whether or not to have biological children with this man if I'm not allowed to have all the facts? So, I've come to the decision that I have to break it off. I respect his decision, but I can't understand or accept it. I have literally no one I can talk to about this because it's his fucking secret and not mine to tell. Edit, I have to go to work now, but I'll try to continue responding throughout the day, especially to the comments that exactly mirror the dissenting voice in my head. I just want to clarify a few things up here. 1. I would not leave him if he tested positive for the defect. I would not leave him if he got sick. I just want to plan for us to be able to afford the best life and care for him if he does, which means we'd have to start immediately. 2. I don't want or need perfect children. That isn't realistic, but it is possible to avoid them being subjected to a 50-50 chance of having this disease. Of course there are alternative options, but again, they involve preparation and planning. I'm more than willing to take a full genetic panel as well. 3. Yes, one or both of us could get cancer, or permanently disabled in an accident, or any other number of things. But I've come to learn that you can't plan for every unpredictable thing life throws at you. This is the rare occasion that we do have the opportunity to prepare. 4. Essentially it comes down to the fact that we're incompatible, regardless of how much we love each other. I'm a planner and he's very laid back. Until now, these traits have complemented each other, but unfortunately they've brought us to an impasse that I don't think we can both move forward from happily. Second edit, I'm floored at all of these responses, supportive and otherwise. At the very least, I feel validated that this is a complex issue with no clear and obvious answer. I've decided to take a few steps back. Those of you who brought up the fact that a few weeks is probably too little time for him to fully process his possible diagnosis have a really valid point. Just because I want to immediately jump into problem-solving mode, doesn't mean it's necessarily the right thing to do here. So, I'm not leaving. Yet at least, and hopefully never, I'm going to find a therapist to help me work through my anxieties and give my fiancé some space, not literal, to work through his. And then we'll revisit this conversation, hopefully with more patience on my part and willingness to act on his. Update 1. Hi. Remember me? I posted earlier this year about my fiancé who was refusing to get tested for Huntington's after learning he had a 50-50 chance of having the genetic defect. Some of you gave me great advice and support, others the wake-up call I needed, and the rest of you. Well, Reddit gonna Reddit. I'm not sure if it was obvious, but I was not in a good place when I made that post. When I stress, I don't sleep or eat. For him, it may have only been a few weeks to accept the situation, but for me it was a few long weeks of non-stop anxiety where I was lucky to get even an hour of restless sleep a night. I was plain exhausted on top of everything else and only began to consider leaving when I started to hit my breaking point. Anyway, we talked about it. At length. We cried, we fought, we researched, I showed him empathy. We consulted with friends, family, and specialists. We pressed pause for days or weeks when we needed a break from the whole damn thing. And in the end he agreed to have the test. Guys, to say we dodged an absolute maelstrom of bullets would be putting it mildly. He's negative, both for developing the disease himself as well as the risk of passing it on. No matter what else happens, this is one area where he's assuredly safe. All of this said, once the euphoria faded we decided it was necessary to put a hold on our engagement and take some time apart. I still love him with all my heart, but this was our first serious disagreement as a couple and it forced us to seriously reflect on ourselves and our relationship. Neither of our positions were wrong, but they were so disparate that there was no realistic compromise. I've spent the last few months traveling abroad, and other than a few texts we haven't spoken much. But I'm home now, and we have our second first date tonight. Wish me luck. Edits. 1. I mentioned this a million times in my first post, but here goes again. I had no plans to leave if he tested positive. I just needed to know so that we could plan our lives accordingly. 2. We decided together to take a break. It's been an incredibly difficult, emotionally charged roller coaster of a year. I didn't leave him. 3. We planned from day one to keep communication to a minimum. It was difficult. I actually began keeping a journal of all the things I wanted to call or text him about. It's extensive, and I can't wait to share it with him. 4. I didn't give him an ultimatum, but I understand why that's the takeaway. I only told Reddit that I was thinking of leaving, and I know that it was rash and irrational. 5. No, I'm not going to kill myself. Sorry if that disappoints you. 6. Why does everyone seem to think that traveling means sleeping around? 7. Just gonna leave a little timeline here for those of you who think I've been traveling since my last post. He learned that he was at risk of developing HD. I posted on Reddit when I reached my own breaking point and needed to vent about how I was affected. We spent the next 3-ish months discussing next steps, consulting professionals, meeting others in our situation, etc. He made his own decision to get tested. That took a while, since there are a lot of steps you have to go through before they'll even agree to do it. We learned he's negative, we rode the emotional high for a bit, then realized we weren't the same people we were at the beginning of the year, and no longer knew how to be together normally given everything we learned about ourselves and each other during the hardest of situations. We decided to take a break and meet for dinner on September 16th. I'm now getting ready to leave for said dinner aid, and I swear this is my final edit. I meant to say this last time too. Update 2. It feels like many of you are determined for there to be a bad guy here, but please don't put this label on my fiancé. He doesn't deserve it. He's not a jerk, an asshole, or an ostrich. He's a man who was suddenly forced to face his own mortality. He had a very human response, and I didn't make it any easier on him during those first few weeks. On that note, it's great that so many of you guys always react perfectly to every tough situation life throws at you. I'm sadly not like that. Sometimes I fuck up like I did by not initially giving him enough time to process. But I owned up to that, took several steps back, and he forgave me. I don't know what else you want from me. Lastly, there are a lot of comments about how the obvious compromise was to just act like he had it. But you know what? It was the idea of living like he was dying that actually drove him get tested. He didn't want us to unnecessarily save half our paychecks instead of using them to enjoy life. Or deal with the complications of IVF if we don't have to. Or forego opportunities that didn't play nicely with the end-of-life care plans we'd be making. Essentially, he concluded, in his words, that the cat was already halfway out of the bag and it could come out but it was never going back in. If he was positive, we'd be obsessing over every little thing being a possible symptom. But if we left things as they were, we'd be doing that anyway. That doesn't mean it was easy at all. We actually had to make a second appointment to get the results because he couldn't bring himself to hear them the first time. But that was okay. I was there for him the whole time to support him however he needed me to. Okay. I'm done with that, on to what you actually clicked for. Do you guys know the feeling of watching your favorite childhood movie for the first time in years and being nervous that it won't hold up or have the same magic you remember? That's kind of what I was feeling yesterday, and I actually have to thank everyone jumping down my throat in the comments because you did a great job of distracting me from the butterflies in my stomach. Well, the magic was still there. We may have spent months apart, but it didn't feel that way at all. In fact, everything felt even better and more comfortable than when we parted. We felt like the happy couple we'd been back in January before this whole thing started. It was like there was a weight hanging over our relationship that was keeping us from actually moving forward despite the good news, and it's finally been lifted. Before last night, I couldn't remember the last time anything with him felt bright and easy. But we're back, baby. I know the general consensus was that this was a dumb move, that we should have opted for marriage counseling instead of going our own ways for a bit. I'm not a relationship counselor, I'm not recommending this method to anyone. I don't know why it worked for us. All I know is that we were both so drained at the time and we each had the same gut feeling that a complete separation was what we needed. Our relationship had become far more exhausting than fun, and I honestly believe that we wouldn't have made it if we'd forced ourselves to work together to fix it. Again, don't take relationship advice from me. But trust your instincts, you have them for a reason. And I'm sure you'll be happy to know that he wasn't sitting at home pining for me while I traipsed around Europe not having sex with people. He was busy with his own adventure. He bought a car, we live in Manhattan, so that's a pretty big thing, and road tripped across the country. We stayed up all night sharing stories and pictures and telling each other about the people we'd met. It was absolutely amazing sharing our experiences with each other. I know it may seem like it would have been better if we'd done it together, but there was something really special about living it through each other's eyes. Anyway, we have the rest of our lives to travel the world together. Because we're not breaking up, suck on that people who were hoping he'd leave me. Look, we know this new honeymoon period we're in won't last forever, but I really think we're prepared to handle whatever other challenges life tries to throw at us. Honestly, there's a pretty good chance we've already gotten through the worst one, knock wood, but even if there's something bigger and badder waiting for us, I'm completely optimistic we'll be okay. So, that's that. We've officially reached the other side of our first major life issue together. Did either of us behave perfectly? No. Are we going to be perfect next time? Probably not. Are we 100% committed to combining our completely opposite ways of dealing with crises into a superpower designed to crush conflict like a 90s cartoon? Absolutely. Update 3, well, buckle up, folks, because the universe apparently knows when to drop a plot twist. After the reunion dinner, it felt like everything had clicked back into place. We even had tentative plans for spring travel together, dog-earing a trail of cafes and landmarks in a little notebook like newlyweds on a rom-com poster. I honestly believed it would be smooth sailing for a while. Except, does life ever work that way? About 2 weeks after our second first date, my now reinstated fiancé called me. I could tell he was holding back excitement, and, as it turns out, nerves. Through some mutual friend wizardry, He found out his biological mother, the one he's never met, let alone even seen a picture of, was alive, and was actually living just an 8-hour train ride up the coast. He'd gotten a single, tentative email from her. She'd learned he'd connected with his biological brother and wanted to reach out, no pressure. It wasn't a big long letter, just a few lines, but it had the effect of setting off a spark in him that, frankly, I hadn't seen since we started dating. He didn't know if he was ready to reply. He handed me his phone and asked if I'd read it and just sit with him. That week became a strange, wonderful, stressful flurry. We researched what reunion might mean, what he'd want if he answered her. I learned so much more about his feelings regarding his adoption, and, for maybe the first time, he told me openly about his lonely questions, about heritage, family, all of it. We ended up on the phone with a search angel, a phrase I'd never even heard until all of this, and an adoption counselor, just to get our heads straight. Meanwhile, we tiptoed back into couples counseling, because we wanted to do this adult reboot, as he calls it, in a way that would make sense to the people we're becoming. Spoiler, my anxious, planning side went full Pinterest board with scenarios and how to meet your birth parent checklists, while he was the human equivalent of Schrodinger's cat, excited and terrified about opening this next box. The email reply he finally sent was only 4 lines. I'd like to meet, if you want. No expectations. Just coffee. I hope you're well. She replied the next morning, and 3 days later, we were on a train north. Now. I wanted to be there, not for the actual meeting, but nearby. He insisted he wanted to do their first meeting alone, so I spent 2 hours over-caffeinated in a diner with pie so bad it was almost offensive. When he came back, his face was unreadable, but he walked over, hugged me right there in the diner, and just cried. Not, single tear, but full-on loud, snotty, joyous/heartbroken sobbing. Long story short, their meeting went well, in the most complicated and beautiful way imaginable. He found out more about his biological family, stories about his birth father, the Huntingtons, the things he loved, the reasons for the adoption, impossibly hard and so human. There was a moment, he told me later, where his birth mother apologized for the disease, the genes, the guilt, the distance. Something shifted in him. For the first time, I saw it was really over, the not knowing, the secret hurts, the what-ifs that had hung between us like dust motes. The next week, miraculously, things didn't fall apart. We started talking about the hard stuff. No, not the will you marry me again rings and Pinterest mood boards, but the actual hard stuff, about trust, pressure, family. About how weirdly alien it felt to both have the all clear on HD and also have this gaping wide possibility of new family. I had a mini epiphany one night. I'd spent so long catastrophe prepping that I'd stopped letting myself hope for wins. The idea of him having a parent, hell, a grandmother, we FaceTimed with her 2 weeks ago, she has a parrot and a suspicious amount of deep fryer recipes, was something out of a movie. Here's the wildest bit, 2 days ago, after a long conversation about what our future could look like, he proposed again. Not like, in a fancy restaurant with an orchestra, but at 2:30 a.m., at the kitchen counter, both of us in ratty pajamas, eating leftover curry straight from the carton, laughing about the fact that neither of us knows how to adult our way through this next part. He didn't even have the ring. He took off his watch, handed it to me like it was a secret code, and said, "Let's do this for real this time. No secrets, no ultimatums, just us. Yes?" So, reader, I said yes. Again. We're still broken in weird places, pieced together differently than before, but I think maybe that's where the gold is. We talk about family, biological, adopted, chosen, a lot, about how trauma and big scares can knock the wind out of love and then reshape it into something better layered. I don't know if it translates, but it feels wise. Or at least grateful. We haven't set a date. We're awful at wedding planning and honestly we'll probably just elope and mail everyone Polaroids. We are, however, going to see his birth mom again next month, and meeting 2 half-siblings he now has. How is that my actual life? There are still awkward conversations, and future anxieties, but it all feels somehow more manageable, less like a tidal wave about to swallow us up and more like something we can surf together, arms linked, terrified and delighted all at once. If there's any advice left in me for anyone else still reading, real love is so much less about perfect compatibility and more about getting really, really good at holding each other's panic, then laughing over questionable diner pie while hoping for the best. Who knew? Anyway, thanks internet strangers for keeping me company over the past year and change. I promised myself I'd only update this saga with something genuinely new and wild, and, well, I think this counts. And if you're wondering, the first engagement was way more fun than the first. Update 4, strap in, because apparently, this year wasn't done handing us I can't believe this is my life moments. I thought reconnecting with my fiance's bio family would be the big twist, the season finale. Turns out, there's always a post-credits scene. Let's start with the day we met his half-siblings. We'd planned for a low-key lunch at his bio mom's house, hoping for awkward, but sweet. Instead, we got awkward, sweet, and immediately chaotic, thanks to his little half-brother, I'll call him Ben, age 11, putting a tarantula on the table before it even put my bag down. Apparently, the parrot has competition for most dramatic pet, There was a moment, right after I yelped, froze, and Ben grinned apologetically, where all the anxiety just ruptured into laughter. Like, ugly, can't breathe laughter. I think that cracked the whole day open. We ended up playing a weird hybrid of Uno and some chaotic Swedish card game, and I realized suddenly that all my will they like us? Nerves had quietly emptied out on the floor with the spilled lemonade. Even my fiancé, who'd been wound tighter than a drum, relaxed into a version of himself I haven't seen since way before the Huntingtons call, lighter, more curious, newly related. That afternoon cemented something for both of us. You don't have to instantly feel like family, but you can recognize a kind of kinship, the way people's jokes rhyme, the same nervous gestures, the stories that echo. And yet it didn't erase the years my fiancé missed, or the weird guilt-panic mix I caught flickering over his face in quieter moments. Later that night, when we were alone, he confessed, I kept wanting to ask if I was invited for real, or just a visitor. I told him the truth, you're both, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be simple, but it's yours now. The next wild left hook came, weirdly, from my side. A month or so after family number 2 entered our universe, my dad sat me down and, with no apparent warning, announced that he and my mom wanted to talk to us both. Reader, there's no stress like your parents want to talk to you now that you're wedding planning again. Turns out, they weren't here to grill us about cake or babies, they wanted to share their own story, one they'd kept to themselves until they thought I might understand. Now, my dad, the man who raised me to believe in fixing things, the eternal planner, had been diagnosed with Parkinson's this year. He'd put off telling me, he admitted, because watching you two handle uncertainty so bravely? I didn't want to pile any more worry on you. Honestly, I don't know if I've ever felt both more proud and more sad at the same time. What followed was a messy, necessary conversation about what adulthood really looks like, about fear, patience, and loving people who change. My fiancé, you know, the one who almost broke under the weight of genetic dread, was the one who reached across, squeezed my dad's hand, and said, we don't have to have all the answers. Just tell us what you need, one thing at a time. Apparently, resilience is contagious. This flipped my brain. For so long, I'd viewed uncertainty as a monster to outsmart. After Huntington's, after therapy, after a break that threatened to be permanent, I believed get the facts, plan obsessively, and you'll be safe. But now? The facts only went so far. Real life is an improv show with only half a script. And then, somehow, the wedding planning that had always felt like a project suddenly clicked into something more like, dare I say, joy. We sat down at a park one deceptively sunny Saturday with a $4 bottle of wine and played wedding futures. Not picking linens or dresses, but daydreaming out loud. Who's there? Who's missing? What happens if we both trip on the aisle? We made a pact, we weren't going to plan ourselves into paralysis. We'd let it be honest, rough-edged, and real, the way the last year had been. Maybe backyard barbecue. Maybe courthouse and messy karaoke. Polaroids definitely, as promised. Around us, family has gotten bigger, weirder, and more tender. My dad comes to brunch and asks genuinely deranged questions about tarantulas. My fiancé's birth mom, tentative but braver with each visit, sent us a recipe for her mother's infamous funnel cake, complete with coffee stains and actual stick figure diagrams. The siblings text me memes with alarming frequency. It's overwhelming, but the right kind of overwhelming. Oh, there's one more headline. After all my years as the relationship planner, I finally got walloped by spontaneity. Last weekend, we got matching tattoos. Not the wedding date, not each other's names, but a small, wait for it, cartoon panicked cat, running off the edge of a table and landing on all 4 feet. Because honestly, that's us, always on the verge of chaos, but somehow always landing somewhere soft together. My mom is resigned about it, so we don't have a wedding date, yet. But we have a family bigger than we thought possible. We have lab results and disease in the rearview, but new uncertainties ahead, and, occasionally, arachnids at family lunch. There are nights where fear still bowls me over, but fewer and fewer of them, and mornings where I wake up grateful that every plan I made got blown to pieces. If I could tell old me, from even last year, it's possible to love people bravely, even without all the answers. Sometimes you find your life not by keeping disaster out, but by letting hope in, bad pie, weird tattoos, Parkinson's, bonus siblings, and all. And hey, if you're at a crossroads and you're panicking, stick around a while. Life's probably about to get interesting. Update 5, I distinctly remember thinking, after our impromptu tattoo fest, okay, now it's got to settle down for a minute. I mean, what were the odds that anything more wild than adoption reunions, surprise familial illnesses, or tarantulas at lunch could possibly happen? Famous last words, obviously. The universe really doesn't do chill. This spring, just as we were settling into a rhythm with my dad's Parkinson's diagnosis, which, by the way, support groups are emotional roller coasters, but the potlucks are unbeatable. My job dropped the biggest work curveball of my career. I was offered a promotion, an actual dream job running a research team, but it meant moving. Like, across the country, to the city where his birth family lived. Call it cosmic irony or fate, but we were suddenly at the beginning of yet another what does home mean conversation, round infinity. Cue panic. Not even cute, sitcom panic. We just finished cobbling together a support system for both our biological and chosen families in our current city. My friends, his longtime adopted parents, whose emotional group text should win a literary award, I swear, siblings both blood and honorary, and my dad, who, thanks to his diagnosis, seemed even less movable than before. I thought, no way do we leave now. My fiance's instant response, do we have to love only one place best? Surreal how your partner's approach to risk can morph from avoidance, dark days of let's not get tested, to this brand of cautious bravery. Therapy, I see you. So, we did what I promised myself we wouldn't do again. We overplanned. We made spreadsheets and diagrams. We drew relationship Venn diagrams on the back of napkins. I toggled through every variable, while he oscillated between nostalgia for cities he'd backpacked through and total giddy nervousness about the possible move. My dad, meanwhile, just shrugged and said, well, if you go, text me every tarantula. But, here's where it gets truly insane. We decided, to our shock and everyone else's utter confusion, to test run the new city together for a month. No wedding, still. No permanent move. No promises of this is it forever. Just, let's go, both of us, put down temporary roots, and see if the future has room for all these new people we love. We subletted an aggressively beige one-bedroom, crammed in the parrot. One day she's an emotional support animal, the next she's actively plotting our downfall, and made the rounds, dinners with his birth mom, video game marathons with Ben, endless coffee with my future mother-in-law. In 2 weeks, I fell in love with a city that smells like rain and barbecue, and I caught myself Googling wheelchair-accessible hiking trails in anticipation of my dad visiting. My favorite moment, though, came in a way I never planned, sitting on the fire escape with my fiancé and his half-sister, blowing bubbles into the muggy night air, listening to her talk about the first time she met her favorite teacher. It hit me, he wasn't a visitor here anymore. Neither was I. Maybe home didn't have to shrink, maybe it could actually grow. Back in our regular city, we called a family meeting. Every branch represented. My parents, my dad resolutely perched on the edge of his chair, like cracking the code to cross-country family logistics, his adopted parents, his birth mom teleconferencing in from her messy kitchen, the siblings all waving at the camera. Dogs barked, the parrot squawked, my mom's casserole actually caught fire, she blames my distraction, for the record. And that moment, chaotic, confused, everybody talking at once, felt more like a wedding than any Pinterest board ever could. So, where are we? We're doing both, at least for a while, split boarding cities, alternating months. I fly home for doctor visits and popcorn movie nights with my dad. He commutes remotely and builds the beginnings of a relationship with his bio siblings. We're not running from uncertainty anymore, we're just living with it, in all its absurd, loving, pie-in-the-face glory. Sometimes together, sometimes apart, but always planning, less obsessively, for our next reunion, next dinner, next adventure. Oh, and about the wedding? One night, drunk on sun and cheap sparkling wine, we announced to everyone that we'd be doing it this fall. A backyard, barbecue, dog-inclusive, tattooed-officiant kinda wedding, with a live stream so every corner of our mosaic family can witness us promising the only thing we're certain of, that we'll keep showing up for each other, even when the plans get thrown out, even when the pie is bad, even when the bubble solution ends up in the mashed potatoes. In a completely expected, deeply on-brand for us, twist, his half-brother is petitioning to serve as best spider, which I already regret agreeing to but can't say no to. My dad asked if he could dance with me before his feet get too stubborn. His birth mom is making funnel cake. The parrot, God help us all, is the ring bearer. So, yeah. Turns out, the giant maybes in life don't ever really leave, but they also don't have to be monsters. Sometimes they're just invitations, asking if you're up for an encore. And, finally, we are.